The comic book is an underground comic book. It's not Spider-Man or Superman, you know, it's not something for mass consumption. And it has a very hard edge to it. I think that the film is quite faithful to the comic book. I hope that it is, in terms of preserving that hard edge and a certain style that the comic book certainly has. But we had the responsibility to fill in some gaps that aren't necessarily there in the comic book because they're different mediums. You know, you don't have to tell a cohesive narrative story. In a comic book, you can do a lot with images and leave a lot up to the imagination of the reader.
And he gradually learns along with the audience why he's come back, what his mission is. In the comic book, right from page one, he knows exactly what he's there for.
Deeply love to shoot the whole film in black and white, but personally I love black and white. I think it's wonderful. It would have been great to do that and show perhaps just the flashbacks, which are a part of Eric's real life, his life when he was alive, show those in color as contrast, you know. But unfortunately, due to the realities, the very shitty realities of the film world, we weren't given the opportunity to do that. You're dealing with a supernatural situation, which is a man who has come back from the dead. And I think the thing that I enjoy most about this film is simply the questions that raises for me as an actor playing the part and for the audience who's going to see the film. If you died and a year had passed since the time that you had died, and during that year you have to assume that the people that you loved and the people who were in your life and loved you would have had a year now to grieve and come to some kind of terms with having lost you. And now suddenly you are given the chance to come back for 2 days. The world would be a very different place through your eyes from the point of view of having been dead for a year and knowing that you only had 2 days now to be alive, in a sense, again. And there would be some fascinating questions that would confront you, like, wouldn't you want to tell somebody? But at the same time, wouldn't you feel a certain responsibility not to trammel in the lives of the people who have had a year now, like I said, to deal with that loss?
Sir,
and you would see the world through these very different eyes, these eyes that are coming from a point of view and a perspective that no one really has. Eric gets the chance to come back and try and see that some kind of justice is done. It's not necessarily a pretty subject, but it's one that I feel comes from him very organically and is quite justified.
Guess it's not a good day to be a bad guy, huh, Skank?
I'll tell you something, I don't really care about any statements the film makes that have to do with that, because that's not Eric's point of view. I'm sure that the world of this film is going to be a better place once the bad guys aren't there anymore. But that's not Eric's reason for doing what he's doing, and so it's not something I've stopped to consider a great deal. There's this wonderful quote from the book Sheltering Sky, where he says, "Because we do not know when we will die, we get to think of life as an inexhaustible well. And yet everything happens only a certain number of times, and a very small number, really. How many more times will you remember a certain afternoon of your childhood, an afternoon that is so deeply a part of your being that you can't even conceive of your life without it? Perhaps 4 or 5 times more, perhaps not even that. How many more times will you watch the full moon rise? Perhaps 20, and yet it all seems limitless."